Hello, welcome. I'm Natasha and this is Puppetry at Home for Children with SEN by Telltale Hearts. Thank you for joining me. This is the first of 3 sessions and this session is looking at how realistic do puppets need to be. So first I'd just like to thank the Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority for making this initiative a reality. And these 3 webinars are going to help you with key insights as to why puppetry can be a particularly good art form to engage young children with special educational needs. And each session, we're going to focus on a different aspect of puppetry and how you can use simple things from the home to develop short but meaningful interactions and help your child's development. So firstly, just a little bit about myself. I'm artistic director of Telltale Hearts, and I've also come from a puppeteering and performing background and have been playing with puppets for many, many years. Most of our shows involve some form of puppetry, and we're going to see a couple of clips from one of our shows, From Here to There, which toured to America and to India, and also all around the UK and to Spain in Europe. And we'll look at what aspects of puppetry in that were particularly good for young children with special educational needs and why. Also in my background, I have worked for Royal Manchester Children's Hospital for their therapeutic and specialist play department as a puppeteer and storyteller, and that was developing interactions with children who were pretty much institutionalized within the hospital for needs of extreme care. So I have quite a lot of experience in using puppetry in different contexts, and I'm going to share some of the learning that I've had with you as part of this webinar. In my experience, SEN, special educational needs, is a hugely broad term. Every child is different. And the key is to finding the best way of communicating with your child. And hopefully this webinar will give you a few different approaches to try using puppets. So let's get started. How realistic do puppets need to be? What do you think of when I say puppet? So what's the first kind of puppet that comes into your mind when I say puppet? Is it a marionette with strings? Is it a Muppet kind of puppet, like a glove puppet, or one that does like Sesame Street? What kind of puppet is it that comes into your mind? Because we all think differently about puppets, I think. The Wikipedia definition of a puppeteer is a person who manipulates an inanimate object, such as a puppet, in real time to create the illusion of life. And I think the important word here is inanimate object. So we're going to explore a range of different puppetry, particularly in this session, where I'm going to introduce you to objects that aren't actually, you wouldn't normally think of as being puppets, but the way in which you handle them, they start to read perhaps a little bit like a character. And I think it's important to note that for some children, this is a difficult area. Some SEN children respond brilliantly to inanimate objects. It's like they almost have a relationship, an intrinsic connection to the inner life of that object, and they attune to it brilliantly. But other children will struggle with the abstraction of having a puppet that doesn't actually look like a puppet, and it's harder for them to engage with it imaginatively. So I think that puppetry is a brilliant tool to help bridge that abstraction for children with SEN, and providing that you're able to give that puppet some focus and to give that puppet some life, they can start to communicate with it and to start to believe in it. So What we're going to see next in a moment is a short clip from our show From Here to There. And this show was created for very young children, 2 years plus, but also was hugely successful in touring to children with SEN. And like I said, it's toured internationally. And the objects in this video are really abstract. They are tubes, card, boxes, and all of the imaginative world is created by the two performers in how they manipulate and how they use these objects. And the way the show works is that how those objects are brought to life is done very gradually to help keep the children and bring the children with us on that journey. And the key thing that I want you to watch out for in this short clip is how the performers use non-verbal voice. So they articulate the objects, they do it vocally, but they do it without words. And it's like a bridge direct to the children. You can hear at some point some of the children's laughter and responses. So I want you to watch very carefully to see particularly the vocalizations that go with these objects and how the performers bring these simple things to life. So without further ado, let's see clip 1, video 1.
Breakfast.
Thank you. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. And I think you can see what I meant about the sounds, how the sound work with the card and also with the boxes. So the game with the giant card starts with the peekaboo, and then the card itself starts to become the puppet. It starts to develop its life of its own, and it kind of meshes with the performer that's behind it. In the boxes, you've got the box that starts to do, it's like the child, isn't it? It starts to do what the parent says, but then has its own, makes its own decision and decides not to play. no, I'm not playing anymore. And all of these situations have a real meaning for young children that they recognise, even though there's no word spoken. Also, that tiny little puppet, which I think of as being the giggle box, the kind of tickling puppet, it's not an animal, but it's got those kind of pet-like attributes, in that it starts crawling all around, where they start to have fun with it. So one of the questions that we're going to return to is, why is non-verbal puppetry so useful in engaging children with special educational needs? And I think children watch to try and understand meaning, and sometimes the language confuses when the intention of that moment can be really clear without the need for language to help create that meaning. So it's trying to unpick what is the clearest intention. And I think abstract puppets, objects, really help with that, partly because there's no mouth to speak through, and they perhaps require a slightly different kind of sound. So just bear that a little bit in mind. We're going to see shortly a second clip. This is from a different company. It's a company that I worked for many years ago. I wasn't involved in this production, but I've seen it, and I think it works absolutely brilliantly. And in this clip, you're going to see how the two puppeteers use shapes to create lots of different creatures and very quick little meaningful interactions. So have a watch here and see how many different kind of animals or people that you discover during this clip. Okay, let's play video number 2. Hello again. So that was a clip from the Big Up by Theatrites. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you spotted all the different objects, how many different creatures and different objects and people and little scenarios they created just from a few abstract, shapes. And also there's the sensitivity of the musician there who's responding to the sound and woo, that's helping to create the meaning, the context around what each puppet creature that's created is really. So I just wanted you to see different ways that puppetry are used, particularly in productions that I think have worked very well for children with SEN. So I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration just to give you an idea of how you can use household object yourself and try animating it. This is something that you can do for your child, with your child, but I'll demonstrate for you first just to give some key points about what works for puppetry and whether or not you're using something abstract. I'm going to be using one of my sponges. Now this is a car washing sponge, but you can use bathroom sponges. It doesn't have to be a car sponge. I'm using this because it's a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to turn the screen so that you can see a little bit what I'm doing down here rather than just looking at me. So one of the important things is, first of all, to find is to find what its focus is, because this doesn't have a face yet, does it? There's not really any face, but if I start to squeeze, starts to read a little bit like a head. And I'm just using vocalizations. Again, I'm not using words, I'm just using so it's starting to develop a little bit of focus and sound by playing with my voice, and the quality of movement that is going with the sound that I'm giving it. If I was doing something more, then it would be a different kind of movement that's still working with that sound as well. So this might be too abstract for your child to connect with, but you can add here. I've added, all I've done is it's the same sponge, but this time I've added a bandana to give it a little bit more a little bit more substance. Let me just turn it down a little bit there. So you can start to see boom, boom, boom. And now it's maybe got a different kind of personality just because of adding a scarf to the top of its head. And again, if this is still too abstract, then you can start adding focus by using something like glasses. So here's our original sponge. And as soon as I do that, it gives you a very, very clear focus to be able to connect with. There we go. It's a very different kind of creature now. And if I just flip this down so you can see the tabletop, now that it's got you've got quite an abstract creature here, but you can get away with it because it's got very, very clear eyes. Ooh. Mm. Oh. 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 Mm. Ooh. 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 So let me just get the screen. There you go. So these are just sponges that I have at home, and it's just a really good way of being able to just focus first on can you see through the puppet's eyes? What is it seeing? Ooh, what's it curious about? And next week, we'll have a look at how you can start to add emotions and maybe look at a little bit more realistic puppets as well. But I think if you can get the principles with something that is inanimate first, it's a great way of playing with your voice and playing with situation in just quite a silly, loose way. And it can also be really helpful for you to model it for your child, so that they have their own sponge and that they can start playing with yours and seeing, you know, maybe how do these two, oh, boom, boom, how do these two start to relate and react with each other. So those are my two sponge characters. So moving on a little bit, we're going to see another extract from Here to There, and this time it's about the two characters wanting different things. So one character wants to build a bridge so that they can tell a story, and the other character just wants to build a bridge that doesn't fall down. That's their intention. And so we start to see how these objects, how the boxes are used in that play and then are used to help tell a story. And the reason we're going to look at that bit is because I'm going to use that story as a way to demonstrate how, using simple objects at home, you can create a little scenario, a little story that is something that you can model at home with your child or with your children. So let's have a look at that third video.
Bridge to their children, their children, and their children.
A bridge where people can meet.
A bridge that lasts forever.
A bridge that tells a story.
Lasts forever.
A story. Living on this side of the hillside were three billy goats. That's my troll. Trip, trap, trip,
Who's that trip-tapping over my bridge?
Oh, it is just me, the middle billy goat.
I'm going to eat you.
No!
Hi again. So that's a clip, and the story that they were telling there is the Three Billy Goats Gruff, which is a story from Norway. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a story that's really famous here in the UK, and it's a very simple template story. And I think what's really interesting about being able to use those boxes is that it gives real clarity to the two performers' intention, because the children are kind of watching the boxes also as the troll, but Noel's relationship, the guy who's doing the troll reluctantly, he doesn't want to have to be the troll. It's a little bit like the reluctant parent, isn't it? When you get sucked into a game that you're not really wanting to play. We all identify with that. And children identify with it really, really strongly too. So it's really helpful to highlight what the real intention is of those, of the puppeteers, of their relationship. And there's a whole level of complexity that actually children understand and relate to, because they're relatable situations to them. But the idea of the bridge and the billy goats is a wonderful little scenario, because it's a very repetitive story in the sense that there are three billy goats. So I'm going to just demonstrate that story for you with household objects. So you can use, for the bridge, you can use tubes. These are just kitchen roll inner tubes, basically, that you can use to be the legs of the bridge. But I have to say, these aren't the most stable. You probably want 4 of them. So for the purposes of my demonstration, because I don't want it to fall down whilst I'm doing it live for you, I have brought 2 of the tubes which were used in the show. So these 2 tubes are card tubes, and I'll make the bridge for you. So this is just the lid of a shoebox, which is going to be my bridge for now. There we go. And as you saw on the story, on this side of the bridge, there was a big billy goat. And this billy goat is made from a painted toilet roll, and its head is from the activity pack that goes with From Here to There. So all of the ideas of how to make this story are in the activity pack, and the link is on your handout. So you can go to that afterwards and you can download the activity pack that's got all the resources there for you to be able to make your own billy goats. But on this side of the hill, we have the big billy goat, and the middle billy goat, and the littlest billy goat. And they've eaten all of the grass on their side of the hill. So they want to cross the bridge to go to the lovely long grass on the other side. First, it was the little billy goat's turn. Trip trap, trip trap, trip trap, trip trap. But underneath the bridge lived a mean troll. Who's that trip trapping over my bridge? It is I, the littlest billy goat Gruff. Oh, you look tasty. I'm going to eat you. Oh no, please don't eat me. My brother is much bigger than I am, and he's much tastier. Oh, okay. And so the little billy goat, trip trap, trip trap, trip trap, trip trap, went to the other side. Next, it was the middle-sized billy goat. Trip trap, trip trap, trip trap. Ooh. Who's that trip trapping over my bridge? It is I, the middle-sized billy goat. I'm going to eat you. Oh no, don't eat me. My brother's much bigger than I am and he's much tastier. Ooh, okay. And with that, the middle billy goat, chip chap, chip chap, chip chap, chip chap, went to the other side. Next, it was the biggest billy goat's turn. Meh! Chip trap, chip trap, chip trap. Meh! Who's that chip trapping over my bridge? Meh! It is I, the biggest billy goat Gruff. Ooh, yum, I've heard about you. I'm going to eat you. Yum, yum. Meh, I don't think so. Bum, bum, oh, oh. And the troll fell to the water, was never seen again. And the big billy goat Gruff, trip trap, trip trap, trip trap, meh, meh, made it to the other side, to the grass. Meh. Where they lived happily ever after. And that's the story of the three billy goats Gruff. So it's very simple structure and it's very easy to recreate at home. So as a task before next time, you could see if you could create the bridge and create the story yourself. Maybe your child would like to be one of the billy goats, or maybe your child might like to be the troll. The troll is just a shoebox. I have covered it with some white paper to make it slightly less distracting. And I've just put some paper eyes that I've stuck onto the back there with eyebrows and the teeth to give him a bit more of a goofy mouth, so that when he opens his mouth, he's got quite a goofy mouth and can speak a bit like this. And it's a really great way of just starting the whole lip syncing, to be able to use his mouth to talk a little bit using a shoebox. And it's a great way for your child to have a go, because it's also it's large enough, it doesn't use too much pincer motor skills. It's a great way of them being able to really play with moving that mouth in a nice chunky way. So as I said, all the details of how you can make the troll and how you can make these billy goats are in the activity pack, so that you can make your own little billy goats if you like. And there's no reason that you have to stick to that story. Once you've got the frame of basically one character wanting to get to the other side and something in the middle stopping it, that is a fantastic situation for you to create your own little scenario and your own little story around. So if you're not familiar with the story of the three billy goats, you can create your own. It might be that you want to cross the bridge to get from, in order to get from the desert to the town. It's entirely up to you. The story of the, as I say, the story of the billy goats Gruff is in the activity pack. It does originally come from Norway. So that's a task for you that you can play with, or indeed you could have a little play with maybe a sponge that you've got at home and see how your child responds to it. Because it's certainly true, not all children respond to abstract puppets in the same way, and they do need context around them. So, I mean, this would make another very good billy goat. Drip trap, drip trap, drip trap, drip trap. If you wanted to use sponges as the billy goats, you could also use the sponges. So, has anybody got any questions about any of those about any of those demonstrations or about any of the clips that I've shown you? Has a big question come up for you that you think, oh, gosh, I'd never thought about that, and I'd really like to know how that might be able to work, particularly with my child. As I said, SEN is such a broad term, and I respect that every child's need is different, and way of relating to the world is different, and it's sometimes just about finding what their way in is and how we can tune into them. So I have put some other links on the handout as well that you can access. Like I said, there's the activity pack, so you can go there for all your resources for that Billy Goat Gruff story. There's also the theatre rights video. That extract from Big Up, I think, is a brilliant extract for you to be able to share with your children and also see if they can call out the different things that they are. I've seen there's a question, so I'll come to that question shortly. I'll just go through the links. There's also a link to the Little Angel Theatre, which is a whole building dedicated to theatre in London, and they have some fantastic online shows. Sometimes they ask for donations for those shows, but otherwise you can watch them for free, and there are some superb demonstrations of how they've managed to get some of their puppet shows and make an online offer, especially during this pandemic. There's also some information from the Puppet Centre, just a little bit more about puppetry. So let me go to your questions in the chat box. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, my positive energy. That's great. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, students of determination, exactly. Please tell us how to reach their hearts to teach them through play. Ooh, wow. Well, during the course of these webinars, I'm going to be using play all the time. That is such a brilliant point, because play is really fundamental. And when I've been working in the hospitals, when I work with children, whatever their determination, and you're right, they are particularly determined. It's about finding a way to be able to connect with what their game might be. So quite often I will use something very simple like peekaboo as a game structure, because I need to get their permission, especially as I'm a stranger, to be able to play with them. And peekaboo is a wonderful way of being able to gain their trust. And I can do that through using the puppet to play peekaboo. So meh, 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 poop, meh. And my relationship with the puppet is also, I'm checking in with the child to see if I've got permission to go further. Meh, meh, meh. I can start to gain their trust as well by relating to the puppet. Oh, no. So I start to create a little play between myself and between the puppet, starting to model that play for them. Then I would offer to them, I'd let the puppet go to the child and invite the child to maybe tickle the puppet too. So it starts a very simple interaction. And I think, to me, that's the importance, is about getting the right scenario. Obviously, it's slightly different for me as a stranger. When it's your child, you already have so much of their permission already, and they know you. But do they know the puppet? And do they know your relationship with that puppet? Probably not. So it's a great way of you being able to find a new way of relating with your child through the puppet. And this is saying, now it's playtime, now we can play, and now maybe they can have one, and we can start to find a way that these two can relate to each other. And this is just through simple these are just simple toilet roll rolls with the heads cut out from a template. So I hope I've helped answer your question there about play. Play is that state of mind in which you take whatever happens in that moment and use it as a way to create little interactions. And in fact, one of the questions I've got here as well is, what happens if my child keeps giggling all the time? And that's just to say that that's perfect. That's a perfect response. If your child is giggling, then they are joining in already with that interaction with you. They're already being part of that game. And that's the important thing, is about bringing them into that game and that exchange. And if something's working and making them giggle, then repeat it and see how much they enjoy that anticipation and that build up. So I think that's a really important point. So thank you so much for that question about play. Are there any other questions that people have, and perhaps particularly relate to their child? I've got another one about language. I think if your child has got delayed language, or if language is something that they really struggle with, then the vocalizations that they use, they will be using vocalizations in different meaningful ways. It's a great way for you to be able to mirror those vocalizations back and put it into context of the puppet. So you're able to use exactly the same vocalizations, or whatever those vocalizations might be, but put it into a little bit of meaningful exchange through the puppet that has also the same vocalizations that your child does. It gives them I'm trying to think what the word is, but unfortunately it's a little early in the morning over here in the UK. But there's validation, that's the word I was looking for, validation. It gives validation to them. There is so much more going on in their minds, and they're able to express through language, and it's respecting their intelligence is there, their knowledge is there. It's sometimes the barrier, it's the bridge of communication that's difficult. So it's finding ways, and play being the excellent way of being able to build the bridge between, so that you can find what those levels of communication are. And sometimes if you inhabit their sound world by mirroring the sounds that they are making, then it helps you to understand maybe what is their intention behind some of those vocalizations that they're making. So I hope that makes sense. And that's also about being able to be playful with the way in which you use sound. We in the UK are particularly bad, I think, at using vocalizations, because we're not particularly good at using a range of languages. Unfortunately, we sit on our everyone speaks English, so we don't need to learn another language, which is such a shame for the tapestry of words and the tapestry of vocalizations. It limits what the palate can do. And the more that you can explore those different sounds, the better, because it's also a stepping stone to language acquisition. And that's going to help your child as well with developing those verbal exchanges later in their development. So any other, I've got another question here. What's that? How edutainment needs to be adopted for students of determination via love. Please tell me how edutainment needs to be adopted for students of determination via love. Ooh, that's got to be about the intention with which you're doing it. And I think love is so important for how you develop anything. Compassion, love, seeking to understand. It's recognizing that because we might be neurotypical doesn't mean that we have all the answers. And it doesn't mean that the way that we see things is necessarily the right way, is just one way, and it's the neurotypical way. So I think with any exchange with students of determination, it's it's so important to have love as the basis and compassion as the basis and humility as the basis to understanding, because what they're able to understand might not be the way we understand something, but I've certainly through my work at Manchester Children's Hospital understood an awful lot more about how complex their thinking is, and how well how incredibly resilient they are in being able to use very simple things, whatever objects might be around them, and find a way of being able to play and make use of them and every interaction as well. So I think it is really important that we're coming at it from that point of view of love and to seek understanding, as opposed to I'm teaching you how we do it and you need to understand. And that underpins being able to get their trust. So I hope I've helped answer that question, and it's such an important point. I think also, just on that note, I think it's really important when we talk about kind of professional puppeteers and professional performers running a company. That's one of the fundamental things that I always seek in the performers, is that it's not about who they are, it's about them being able to make connection with young children, whoever those young children are, and it's about the child being more important than they are. And so you're seeking people who are able to create those exchanges, because essentially they love the child more than they love themselves. And I think that's important in something that has a tendency in our industry and theatre industry to have ego around it. You have to be compassionate and be able to listen, to respond. Great. So are there any other questions around any of that? I hope you've enjoyed the different extracts that I've shown you. Again, that beginning of From Here to There is that peekaboo. And as I said, I use it an awful lot as a way of getting, building trust with children who I've not met before, if I'm in the ward for a first time with a child. And through the puppet, often putting their focus on something that isn't me is a great way of having a means of being able to communicate with them. And yeah, and the last point I've just got, if my child wants to talk to the puppet, not to me, that's even better, because they're investing in the life of that puppet, which is wonderful. So you can communicate with them through the puppet rather than being through you and the puppet in a three-way situation. So next week, we're going to look at emotional development, at how we can use puppets to help develop emotional understanding. And what I mean by that is they understand their emotions. You know, children with determination absolutely express all the emotions, but to also see that modelled in puppets and how it perhaps gives validity to some of those feelings that they have, and helpful ways in which perhaps they can also manage some of those feelings. So we'll be looking at emotions through puppetry as part of our next webinar, but that won't be for a few weeks. So I think the next one is scheduled for the 9th of November. So there's a short gap before I'm back with the session 2. And then the session 3 will be the week following that. So thank you very much for joining me this morning. I hope you've enjoyed the introduction to how realistic puppets need to be, and you can perhaps play at home with how abstract or how realistic you want your puppets to be. Thank you.